my street, my boulevard. It's right up my Straza. Oh my God, it's garden right up there. Ah, it's right up my podcast.
Welcome to Right Up My Podcast. My name's Kate White.
And my name's Gwen Watson. And this is the podcast in which we talk to totally talented people about the bonkers shit that they do to make them feel good.
And in this episode, we talk to Vicky Paul, all about intuitive painting. And this definitely does fall into the slightly more bonkers category, but also so fascinating. And
I want to say that it was Vicky herself who said that. She said this definitely falls into the more bonkers shit category for your listeners.
Yeah, that's true. We're not being insulting here. It's just a fact.
But I tell you what, I've bloody enjoyed this one. I've really enjoyed doing this.
I have as well.
Yeah.
And this has been a great, get your hands dirty in a literal sense, try out section as well.
Yes, and be like a kid again and get playing, which is, I've really enjoyed. I look forward to talking about this one after our interview.
100%. But anyway, Dar, what have you been up to? How you doing?
Well, I've actually made a list. So, here are things that I've been doing to make myself feel good. One of them is there's been an open studios in North Pembrokeshire.
Oh, I love those.
I love those.
Yeah.
I've done them a couple of times in Bristol. And because not only are you going to see some really bloody talented people, and they're all so different. That's what I love. From house to house, they could not be more different. And you're like, my God, people are creative. But also you get to go into people's houses.
Oh my God, that's my favourite bit about it. Just going, eyeballing other people's homes. Some people's homes you go into, you're like, oh my goodness, you have got such a good eye for how to make it just feel so full of your personality.
Yes.
I love that.
And I have to say, as much as I love it, it was also a little bit hard for me and my friend. We live in townhouses, and then to go around we're in West Wales, and people have got some just most incredible places with sweeping lawns or sweeping views and beautiful studios that a couple of times we were both a little bit teary. We were like, I don't know if this is good for us. People have got such nice houses.
Of course, that's a totally different experience to doing it around, I don't know, Bedminster in Bristol for any of those Bristol listeners, which is still amazing, and you're blown over by the talent of the people.
Oh,
but
still some bloody amazing houses in Bristol,
Victoria.
though.
Yes, but I can imagine some of the pads in Pembs.
Yes, one guy who was showing us these railway railway carriages that he'd converted into these little cabins. I was literally teary, and I was like, do you have a brother?
I think I might like him a lot.
I was like, I definitely, literally to this man's face, I was like, I definitely need a man who's good with his hands and who can build things. This is amazing.
Was he kind of moonwalking backwards out of the door? Oh my God, I'm so scared right now.
He's like, are you going to buy some of the art or what?
Yeah.
Get out of my house, lady.
Well, we were talking off air before we started recording about buying houses. Do you think you could live in a place like that, like in a converted railway carriage or
do you know what? I did go online yesterday onto one of those, it was like Money Supermarket, whatever, to look up what sort of mortgage I could get, because there's a house for sale up the road, and it looks like I could possibly just afford a railway carriage. So I think...
never say never.
So yes, I could totally adjust to the idea that what I can afford.
Sorry, I'm not meaning to piss on your bonfire here.
They're really beautiful. That's the main thing.
You hold out for that big pad with the sweeping driveway and the sea views, girl.
If I end up in a railway carriage, I'll be totally happy. You can come and stay. I'll probably have a camp bed I can roll out. You can sleep on the deck.
I love a camp bed on the deck.
But you see, you love camping. It's going to be perfect.
Some friends, however, may not be visiting for quite a long time.
Now, the other things I've been doing is eating. It's
my favourite thing.
This is my favourite time of year when loads of people have a surfeit of stuff from their greenhouses. They're like, would you like my courgettes? Would you like my cucumbers? I'm like, yes, give them all to me. And One thing that a friend grows is padrons.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
So good.
I've been living on them.
So good.
I've got an air fryer now. I don't know if I've told you about this.
You have, and this blew my mind a bit.
Yes. So this is actually my mum's friend had got this air fryer, didn't like it. She couldn't be bothered with it. So anyway, gave it to me. I have cooked everything in there from like chicken to courgettes. I've made crispy onion. I've had gammon in there last night. I've made hot chips. I've made tortilla chips. I bloody love it. But padrons, you could just spray them with a bit of oil, cook them up. I throw in some Engevita flakes because I'm
What's Engevita flakes?
You know, like what vegans have.
Like what those vegans have? Bit of Engevita flakes, because...
They're just vegan flakes. They're yeast flakes. Yeast flakes, that's what they are.
Oh, that sounds like something you're going to see a doctor about.
They're delicious.
I like some yeast flakes on my padrons. Suddenly I'm going off this idea.
Stick with me here. But I just feel like I'm on holiday.
Oh, it sounds so good. So, listener Gwen sent me a photo the other day of this beautiful kind of Spanish bowl with these perfectly cooked padrons, some flaked salt, or yeast flakes, as I now know, on the top. Glass of ouzo. I thought you were in a restaurant. I genuinely thought that was a picture from your local tapas restaurant.
Oh, my God!
But was that just your back garden?
I live in West Wales. There is no local tapas restaurant. Yeah, that was my back garden. And yet, hence me having padrons served with ouzo. But I love them. I love them.
So delicious. Did you get a hot one? Because apparently 1 in every 10 is a hottie.
Yeah. Which I've never experienced that in Spain before. But yeah, with my friends' ones, absolutely, yeah. There's always a little
oh, what's snuck in?
But I went to somebody's house the other day and they were growing them. They were like, God, these peppers are hot. They were letting them grow till they were red. I was like, no, sir, you want to cut them off when they're green, fry that shit up, chuck on some salt.
Red padron pepper? What is this madness?
No, that's going to blow your roof of your head off.
Well, this sounds so good because last episode we were talking about all the burgers, chips and sort of fried fish you'd been eating. And now you've swung 180. We're onto the padrons, the cucumbers and the homegrown produce.
Yes, and cooking everything in an air fryer. Hooray! I really should get sponsorship. Previously it's been the crock pot. Now it's the air fryer. Yes. Stay tuned.
Next up, the toaster.
Anyway, what have you been doing, Kate?
Well, I have been making myself feel full of self-loathing by doing what you were doing previously and just too many plates of fish and chips, too many barbecues with mounds of meat. I mean, in any other meal, you wouldn't eat 4 different types of meat, would you?
No,
you would just have your steak and whatever your side is.
I wouldn't have that in a week.
No, but you go and you sit down at a barbecue and suddenly it's totally acceptable to have 4 sausages, 2 burgers, a chicken wing and some barbecued spare ribs. I mean, it's madness.
All washed down with many pints of beer. This is the thing about this time of year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I've been doing, and now I'm feeling slightly like listening to you talk about your padrons. I'm like, oh God, I need to get some more greens into my life. Anything that's green, please.
I mean, this is the thing. You could just get fit again in September, can't you, Kate?
That's the plan.
A little bit of a meat detox.
I've signed up because I always like an event to sort of focus the mind for training. So I've signed up in November with a group of ladies to do a running obstacle course event around the park. I love an obstacle course. I love it. I love to get muddy.
Oh my God, is it one of those Tough Mudder things?
Well, it's not Tough Mudder, but it's that kind of event. Just cheaper than Tough Mudder. And no barbed wire and electric currents, which I've heard all sorts of horror stories about Tough Mudder. So that is my motivation. So, but I did that stupid thing of going from 0 exercise to, I'll come on a 10K run with you. So got to about 5K and I was like, right, time out, people. We're walking now. Now we're going on a nice walk.
Oh my God, you are amazing.
No, I'm foolish. And now I feel kind of stiff and sore, but it's okay. I've got until November and it's only a 6K run. And
only a 6K run.
Only a 6K.
And then what? But it's not just a 6K run, is it? So what is it in? Is there mud involved, Kate?
I hope there's mud involved. I'm going to ask my money back if there's no mud involved.
Oh, it's November, so there's bound to be.
I want to be muddy. I want to be
climb things.
then you got to climb things, you got to go under things. As I'm saying this out loud, I've realised how insane I sound. But it's how I get my kicks. I love it. I'm like, yes.
How do you train for that sort of thing, please?
Well, this is a good question.
Yeah.
Probably I won't train.
And
then
God.
and then I'll rock up,
go wrong?
push myself through it, come at the other end and be like, oh, I'm a little bit sore. I don't understand why. But in other news, I watched a really good film the other night.
Ooh,
So,
pen and paper ready.
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And it stars Nicolas Cage as like a fictionalised version of himself. And I love that. I don't know why I always enjoy actors playing really heightened versions of their own personalities.
Especially Nick Cage.
I know.
Nick Cage, sorry, not Nick Cage.
That's
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. And he basically, he plays a drunken narcissist. And throughout the film, he has this sort of vision of a younger version of himself. You know, if he was sat at a bar on his own, he'll be sat talking to this younger version of himself who who just basically buoys his ego the whole time. And he's like, you're not an actor, you're a goddamn movie star. And at one point, he snogs his younger version of himself and he's like, God, Nicolas Cage is such a good kisser. Like, he's just such a narcissist. It's brilliant. It's so funny. And it also...
This sounds amazing.
It's so good. And it also stars the brilliant Pedro Pascal, who I love, from Narcos, Game of Thrones, all sorts of other stuff. And Sharon Horgan, who I did not expect to pop up in that environment. Hollywood
She does
A-list.
pop up. She does pop up in some unusual places, I have to say.
She does. And she's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, she's exactly as you would expect her to be. And it's brilliant. I would definitely recommend it. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Although when I did the Google, not the Google, you know when you're trying to search and you can just talk into the microphone on your telly?
I've seen this on other people's tellies, yes.
So the name of the film is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It came up saying, I'm sorry, we cannot find the bearable weight of normal talent. And I just thought that was so hilarious. It's like the perfect, exact opposite of the film title.
No, technology, get it right.
Get it right.
That's like more normal life, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's yours and mine.
Bearable weight of completely zero talent.
That's going to be yours and my autobiography.
Yes.
When we release the right of my podcast book. Let's write that one down. Where can we watch that, please?
I had to rent it off Movies.
Ooh,
so I rented
you paid money.
I paid money. I paid 4 of our fine British pounds for the pleasure.
# worth it.
How about you? What have you been watching?
Well, I've just started watching. I'm watching many series with many different friends. My mate Matt comes around once a week. We watch Last Kingdom together. We're on about series 4 now.
Oh God, I love it. I love it. It's so good.
Uhtred, son of Uhtred.
Son of Uhtred.
I mean, it's a hard watch, I've got to say. It's really hard watch. There's a lot of your favourite characters just die suddenly.
Oh God, why do they have to do that to us?
I know. But what I really love about it is I'm learning stuff all the time. And I was literally, this is my dream scenario, I was literally at a party the other day, just a little dinner party, and people talking about the Romans and the Vikings and how long the Romans have been around and that the Vikings were here before them. I was like, no, the Romans were before the Vikings and the Romans weren't here for that long. And because I was like, I know this because the Vikings used Roman roads in the Last Kingdom.
I love it. You're the local historian now.
Yeah, I am learning shit. And I'm watching Virgin River with my friend Daisy, and I'm watching Schitt's Creek with my dad. So I've got a few going on. And
don't get me started on Schitt's Creek. Amazing.
Love it. Finally, season 2. We're starting to love it. We've gone through the hard yards. Anyway, I've just started watching this series on Disney Plus. Welcome to Wrexham. It's kind of a real life Ted Lasso-ish. It's where let's get their names.
Ryan Reynolds.
Yes, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney by the Wrexham football team. It's the story.
God.
So what I didn't realise is that they were also making a documentary about it as they were doing it. And it's all come from Rob McElhenney because he's just a massive sports fan, and he convinced Ryan Reynolds to get on board. But anyway, it's such a great story. And it's them then trying to lift the Wrexham out of, because they've been like relegated. I don't understand. They're relegated to something below the league. They're trying to get them back into the league. It could be a perfect Hollywood tale. Don't think it is though. But
I love the sound of this because I've seen in various sort of news and social clips about the fact that he owns Wrexham.
Yes.
And I love Ryan Reynolds anyway. He's so hilarious. I'm 100% going to watch that. That's a good top tip.
I mean, it's Disney, so they do that thing where they only release one episode a week, which kind of so annoying. I know. We like to binge, for the love of God. But it's, for a sports docu-series, which I wouldn't usually touch with a barge pole or a hockey stick, it's absolutely, so far, I'm 2 episodes in, absolutely blooming loving it. Welcome to Wrexham!
What is that? Is that a Wrexham accent?
Probably not. It is now.
That, people, is exactly what they sound like if you live in Wrexham. Sorry, Wrexham listener.
Sorry, Wrexham.
It's right up my podcast.
Now, just a reminder about our Patreon page. This is where we put our extras from our episodes and where we put all our jingles, and also where Kate and I do a little bit of extra whiffle waffle just for your delectation.
Now, we don't rely on advertising in order to fund the production of Right Up My Podcast, but we do have a Patreon page where we would love it if you could go over, and if you can donate the cost of a cup of coffee once a month, that would just help to cover the time and the costs that Gwen and I spend in putting these episodes together, cover the time of our talented team who help us out and help us keep producing episodes of Right Up My Podcast with fabulous guests that we know you'd love to listen to.
If you'd like to become one of our supporters, head on over to patreon.com/Right Up My Podcast. So this is episode 32, the last episode of season 4 already. This is all about intuitive painting.
We talked to artist Vicky Paul, yes, all about intuitive painting. Vicky is an abstract artist and an energy healer, and she describes this type of art, whether you're doing it yourself or whether in her own work, as a way to express that which exists but cannot be seen. And we start our chat with Vicky by asking her, how did she first get into intuitive painting?
I used to paint all the time as a kid and painted all the way through school. Both my grandparents were hobby artists and I've always been creative in inverted commas and loved dance and acting and whatnot. But then I stopped painting maybe just my mid-20s and followed different paths. But then my husband and I had 3 miscarriages and I really struggled to express how I was feeling, and I wasn't the type of person that wanted to go into a group session. At that point, I just didn't feel it was right for me. And it came into my mind to start painting again. And I literally found myself in a painting shop buying canvas and paints, and as my husband says, chucking paint onto the canvas. And I couldn't believe how therapeutic it was.
Right.
Because for me, it was freeing, it was liberating. And at the time, I didn't fully understand what I was doing from an intuitive and art therapy point of view. I just thought the therapy was in throwing paint onto the canvas and making a mess and just playing. And the more I looked into it, the more I realised that actually whilst it's as simple as chucking paint on canvas, what's happening in the background or unconsciously is huge. It's about tapping into that energy to help you release what you need to release that you maybe struggle to articulate, because we are all not great at expressing how we feel because we're so used to squishing our feelings down. And it's also about, for me particularly, I'm an abstract artist, and although my background is in realism, abstract art for me is amazing because you're not trying to create or represent or replicate anything in particular, and therefore there's no judgment, because a lot of people in school, you'd be taught how to draw a banana or an apple or a landscape or whatever it was, and if it wasn't a photographic representation,
and it has to be right,
you'd think it was crap. Whereas abstract art, it's non-representational, so there's no right or wrong with it.
I really like the idea of this, and this reminds me of your Instagram. I love your stuff, by the way.
Thank
it's
you.
just so bright
beautiful.
and colourful and cheerful, and the stuff. You've got an amazing picture on the wall behind you, which is all like pinks and turquoises, which are my favourite colours. I don't know what that means, but one of your recent posts, you said you used the words "let loose." I love that. So, yeah, and what you're saying is that absolutely anything goes. Just grab it and chuck it at it.
Yeah. Pretty much. You know, and if you're going to chuck it, I love chucking paint on canvas, because when the paint lands, it depends how much water's in it, how thick it is, what the surface is like, what's underneath it. It'll either land in a dollop or it'll just explode all over the canvas. So it just tells so many different stories. So it's absolutely let loose. And the best way to describe it is when you're a kid. So if you've got children that are young, you know, sort of 5 and under, that play unthinkingly, and they paint, and it's stick drawings, and the sea is red and the sky is purple. They don't care. They just do what they feel called to do. That's kind of what you're trying to not replicate, because you have to do it in your own way, but it's taking all the preconceived ideas about what colour means, what shape, texture and pattern means, how good or not you are, and just allow that to unfold on the canvas. And we all struggle with letting go in general of anything.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, we like to control everything. So this is a great way to help you with that.
And we also think if we're not good at it, then, or maybe we've tried it once and we weren't good, so we think, oh, that's not for me. That's not my thing. Yeah,
and this is the thing. It's not about good. What is good? Art is the most subjective thing there is. You know, somebody loves something, another person hates it. You know, worse still, it has no effect on you whatsoever. It's just blank. So this is what it's all about, is ripping up the rule book. It's not about being good. It's not about the end result. You're not necessarily going to hang it on the wall or stick it on the fridge. It's about the process and what the colours and the shapes and the way that you've moved the paint, how that is a visual meditation to help you access what's going on within you. That's what the process is all about, is creating shapes to help you visually lose yourself so that you've got something to focus on. It's kind of like an open-eyed meditation, so that you can get out your head and the information can surface. So it's colours and shapes to help you facilitate that process.
So from a therapeutic perspective, from helping you deal with maybe some mental health challenges, maybe just helping you feel better when you're not feeling great, it's about getting out of that thinking head, about stopping that kind of trying to be in control of everything. And does it bring up things? Should you prepare yourself that you might be triggered in a way by this process?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you can do, and I always do this in my own workshops, whether it's one-to-one or in a group session, I get people to set an intention for the workshop. So you would set an intention for your hour that you're going to spend doing this. And that can be anything from simply, I just want to try and let go for half an hour, or I want to give myself some space that's just some me time. Or if you are used to this kind of working, whether you've maybe done something with yoga or breath work, or you speak to a counsellor, or you're used to accessing your emotions and your feelings, then you can set the intention to ask a question to help get the answer for. Because sometimes when we have challenges, we're in our own way, and we try and tackle it from a logical point of view. And that's great if you're a logical person, but a lot of people are not. They use their brain in some capacities in a logical way, but they rely much more heavily on gut instinct and how they feel about something. So this can help you answer questions. Absolutely. So I always do say to people, it can bring up tears, it can bring up laughter, it can bring up emotion, but you've got to trust the process, that you will only bring up what you're able to process in that moment at that time.
Yeah. I'm about to ask a really potentially stupid question. I'll do it anyway.
Not stopped you before.
Is this what... This is very true. Is this what art therapy is? Like, is what you're doing? Because I've heard art therapy a number of times throughout the years and never actually really given it much thought as to what it means. Is what you're doing kind of classically art therapy, or is it, have you got your own twist on it?
I would not say that, although it is therapeutic in the broadest sense of the word, art therapy, people study, there's psychology involved in art therapy, there's a framework and a structure and a process to using art. And a lot of counsellors and therapists use it for children who struggle to verbally articulate past trauma. So art therapy tends to be in a sphere, I mean, we all have trauma of some description. To be human is to have trauma, but a lot of people tend to think trauma is the big ticket stuff, abuse, that kind of thing.
We have big and small t trauma.
Yeah, of course. So art therapy for me is much more structured in its process, and there's a range that you go through, and you start off sort of easing yourself into it, and then there is a specific process that you go through. For me, although it is therapeutic, I would say that, and I call my workshops intuitive painting workshops. So what I'm guiding people to do is to help tap into their intuition, because my belief is we are mind, body and spirit. We're part physical, part energetic. And most of us spend most of the time in the physical aspect of our being. And I feel that why would you not tap into this other reserve of guidance, wisdom, healing, etc., etc. So it's about helping people to reconnect with the energetic aspect of who they are. And I would describe that energy as everything from the gut instinct when you walk into a house. If you're looking for a house, you think, oh, this is the house for me. Or you just meet somebody and you go, oh my God, I fancy him or her. Or I don't like this place, or I don't like that person, or they're amazing, etc., etc. That is your energetic being communicating with you, and it's always trying to communicate with us in so many different ways. But because we spend so much time in our mind and in our physical body, because we live in a physical world, we ignore or can't hear or don't realize all of these other conversations are going on. So my art is about helping you tap into that.
Yes.
As part of that process, there are therapeutic benefits. But I would say for me, it's, I'm a qualified energy healer, but I'm not a trained art therapist.
Yeah, okay. And with the energy healing then, like you were saying about we have our gut, we have that energy, and then some people might call it the universe, some people might call it your higher self or your ancestors or etc. So is there a kind of you're tuning in, but are you also kind of channeling somehow?
That's a great question, and I would suspect yes. And the easiest way to describe it, and I was taught this, that we are all psychic, so we all have a sixth sense, which is our gut instinct. And some people, say that you access it through your third eye, which is just the point in your forehead between your two eyes, and that's the entry point. Some people talk about connecting through their heart. Other people talk about connecting in their gut. Everybody is different, and everybody experiences these sensations differently. Some people will get a heart flutter. Some people will get a churning stomach. Some people will get tinnitus sound or a ringing in their ears, or they'll maybe get a kind of tingling sensation in their forehead. So we all connect with inner energy and outer energy. They are one and the same, I believe. And when people talk about source and the universe, for me, that's kind of everything above. But we can tap into that because energy never dies. Energy passes through us because we are actually energy. Yes.
I love this.
Oh my, that's such an interesting point. Totally outstanding. You have just blown my mind completely.
You talked about obviously your previous life as a radio presenter before you became full-time artist. And on your website, you talk about having had a profound experience that started you on the path that you're just talking about now. Is that something you're willing to tell us, to share a bit more about?
That is very intriguing, can I just say?
You piqued our interest.
I'm amazed it's taken us this long to ask that question.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, of course. It's hooked you in. Yeah, so as we were talking about before we started recording, I was a radio presenter for many years, and the brief story is I lost that job fairly abruptly, and I did not take kindly to it. I was really upset.
Often the way in radio.
A whole load of issues. Yeah. And I know some people listening might say, oh, well, you lost your job. Where did the profound experience came? But what I didn't realise at the time that I do now, I wrapped everything up in what I did rather than who I was, and I lost my job, so I lost my identity, and I had no idea who I was. It also mirrored some stuff that happened in childhood, so the whole thing just kind of came, and I had no idea who I was or who I had been or where I was going. And then off the back of that, I didn't work for a year because despite trying, I'd been a radio presenter for so long, and it was just before the crash, so there wasn't a lot of jobs going about. So I ended up spending all my savings. My relationship broke up. We were doing up a house. We had to sell the house. It was just one of these things. It was a bit of a catalogue of errors. And I wouldn't call it a full breakdown, but I hit rock bottom. I absolutely hit rock bottom. And the profound experience that I had was over a period of time, and I call it a spiritual awakening. And some people, it's a one-off event and they're on this new path. But for me, it happened over a period of time. And I had started I was very clumsy because of everything that had happened. I was an insomniac, was one of the sort of kickbacks from it. So wasn't sleeping, was absolutely shattered, but kept dropping things. But they didn't kind of drop out my hand. It was as if I'd thrown them up and out my hand, and it was kind of weird. And it always popped into my head, rather than me being tired, my papa was trying to get hold of me. Now, my papa is who I call my grandfather, who had been dead for over 20 years. But this never felt bizarre to me. And this went on for probably about 9 months. And then I moved into a house, and this is sort of a abridged story, believe it or not. I moved into a house, and it had a glass door between the lounge and the hall. And I kept seeing this shadow walk past the door. And again, that was my papa trying to get hold of me. And this was all kind of bizarre. And one of my friends had suggested, because I hadn't been sleeping, why don't you see this energy healer? She'll maybe be able to rebalance, because nothing you've been doing, the yoga, etc. is not working. So went to see this woman, had a great session. And at the end of it, I thought, well, if there's anybody I can ask this question to, it's going to be her. So I said to her, I think my papa's trying to get hold of me. I think I'm seeing my papa. And she said, well, he is trying to get hold of you because he wants to know who the guy is that's moved in that plays the violin. Now, she could never have known that. And my then boyfriend, now husband, had literally only just moved in with me, and he did play the violin, and my papa played the violin as well. And I thought, okay, there's something in this. Oh my God, I got
goosebumps already.
Yeah. And then 2 or 3 days later, I was telling my sister about what had happened at the energy healer. And I literally, this is the profound experience, my papa appeared in my living room as I don't know what you want to call it. Some people call it a ghost, a spirit. But for me, it was the easiest way to describe it. You know, the ice sculptures that people carve. So you can see the shape and the texture and the form, but they're see-through. But he was moving, and he was holding out his left hand to me and smiling, and he had on his tweed coat. I mean, everything as he would be, the same size. Yeah. And I was in the middle of telling my sister and kind of looking over the corner of my eyes going, oh my God, what's going on? And he was maybe there for a few seconds and then disappeared. And that was really what set me off on the path, because I thought, okay, there's something definitely going on here. You don't just randomly see dead people. And I ended up speaking to somebody that I know, and then literally 2 days later booked into a week-long course at a place called Arthur Findlay College, which I affectionately call Hogwarts, but it's basically a college for psychic and spiritual studies. And unbeknownst to me, I'd always been fairly intuitive as a kid. But unbeknownst to me, I had psychic and mediumship abilities that had lain latent until I had this profound experience, and off the back. So I then spent the last, have spent the last 10 years exploring that and trying lots of different, I call them mystical arts, but just exploring that connection and what that means for me. But it took me a long time to actually own up to that, because for me, psychic mediums get a bit of a bad rap. I know there's a lot of charlatans out there, as there are in every industry. And I was kind of like, I'm not really comfortable with that label. And that's why I called myself an intuitive, because it seemed to be a bit more accepted. But ultimately, that was the profound experience. But it completely changed everything. My entire life flipped on its head. And it took me off in a completely different direction, where I learned to be a yoga teacher. I learned to be an energy healer. I trained to be a soul plan practitioner. And I do mediumship and psychic readings for people and help them connect with loved ones. This was never on my plan. I was a radio presenter. I was going to go down the communication route, and I had a PR business for a while as well, which I ran in conjunction with the psychic mediumship work. So it totally changed my life for me personally, but also in terms of the career and what I was going to do with my life.
So you're a psychic as well?
Well, everybody's psychic. I believe, and my understanding is everyone is psychic, and you can expand that energy and play with that energy and practice it. And it's like anything, the more you practice, the better you become. And we all have it. If sometimes the phone rings and you say, oh, that'll be Mum or that'll be John, and you pick up the phone and it is them, but you weren't actually thinking about them. Or you maybe think about somebody and then you get a text from them or whatever. My husband and I do it all the time. We text at the same time. So these are psychic connections. That's energetic connections. A lot of people, it depends, how open-minded your listeners are, and I guess they are, given the fact that you have some bonkers self-care, which I love, rituals. This is probably could fall into the bonkers category.
Whatever works.
Yeah, whatever works.
I find it so interesting, you describing that vision you had of your grandfather, as you sort of described it as a sort of ice sculpture you could see through. Because when I was younger, I used to have night terrors. And I used to be awake in my room and I would see these outlines of someone, and it would be exactly as you described, like a kind of an ice sculpture.
Kate!
Not an ice sculpture, but that's a really good way of describing it.
You've got latent psychic powers.
I know, but isn't that nuts? And for me, it was a very terrifying experience, because I was asleep and I'd wake up and so on. But and maybe it could well be something totally different, but that really resonates with me, that description that you gave there.
Well, I would trust that, because if that's resonating with you, that's your intuition telling you that's exactly what it was, whereas your brain's going, oh no, it wasn't that. I must, night terrors, I must have been imagining things, it must have been a dream.
You got it, baby.
Oh my God.
You have got it.
How do you bring this then into the art that you do personally?
What I have done, and I've been doing it for the last 2 or 3 years, is I call them soul energy portraits. So it combines my energy work, and I'm going to umbrella it under that. So it's the psychic, intuitive, mediumship, all of the above. I call it energy work with painting. So it's like signing up for a bunch of energy healing sessions. So if you've had a life coach, or you're getting a series of 6 Reiki sessions, or whatever it may be, because you're at a space in your life where you've had enough, you don't understand what's going on, or your health is stopping you from moving forward, or there's something just preventing you from taking the next step towards whatever it may be, or you're not happy, your well-being's not great, then it tends to be that you would come to me to help you unlock and open up what is holding you back. So we connect energetically, intuitively. So I connect with your energy and I interpret what's going on for you at that point in time. So there's up to sort of 13 or 14 different layers. All of them tend to be very different, and all of them have information, guidance and wisdom in the colours and in the shapes and in the textures. So the easiest way that I can describe it is kind of like a guidebook for your life, for your past, your present, your future, the challenges that you have faced, the scenarios, and it can be as specific as when you were a kid, such and such and such and such happened to you. You haven't resolved that period in your life. So you have to go back to that part of your childhood and start to unpick it. But because you're afraid of going back there because there's so much heavy energy, then there's some supportive colours in this particular layer to help you do that. And that could be, if there was blue, for example, that's part of the throat chakra, which is about communication. So that energy, you might find that there's blue in that layer to help you verbally articulate what it is, as a random example. It's a really intense, sometimes triggering, but often very enlightening process, that at the end of it, you've had these energy sessions, but you've also got this visual representation of all of your history, all of the layers, although you can only really visually see the last layer, that you can then hang in your home. And because of the history and the stories and the energy, it's all in the painting. It's part of that transition process. So I can't explain it. I cannot explain it other than everything we do leaves an energetic footprint, and all I'm doing is finding that energetic footprint and bringing it into my energy, and so that I interpret it.
And so to prepare for creating that soul painting for someone, you've had conversation. Have you met face to face, or no? You're just tapping into them.
Yes. So I work. I don't like to know anything about a person. We connect on Zoom because I need to feel that they're the right energy for me, and that there have been some people who I haven't felt comfortable working with, because ultimately your energy feeds into my energy feeds into your energy. So I end up taking on, so I need to feel that whoever is coming to me for this is ready for it. But we connect on Zoom and we'll have a 5-minute conversation, and that's really, for me, it's a permission process. But I don't know anything about them. I don't want to know anything about them. The only information I take off people is their birth name.
So do you, once you've sort of said, right, here is the finished product, do you then interpret it for them? Do you then talk them through what they're seeing?
I don't talk them through what they're seeing. I tell them what came through to me whilst I was painting it. What happens is I take a photograph of each layer and I write down all the information, and then when the painting is finished, we then have a Zoom session and I run through everything that came through for me, and we go through each of the different layers in terms of all the different bits of guidance. And then there tends to be a sort of summation, but it's really about realigning you back on course and back on your path, whatever that path means to you.
My God, I would love to have one of those paintings. It would just be incredible.
I know, I was thinking that as well. You'd be like, oh my God.
Would you share this bench with me? I will tell you how to be much better, to be more well. I've a secret I can tell. Keep these words in mind. You only need be kind.
So Vicky, for people out there who are not confident artists, can you give some guidance on how to get started on this if people want to do their own piece of intuitive painting?
Well, let's assume that they have some paints, whether that's watercolour or acrylic paint, or even if they're crayons, anything with colour. I prefer not to use crayons or pencils because we tend to have a limited expression of that, and that's because it's a fine point and it's where we drag it across the canvas. With paint, you can use so many different tools, in inverted commas, to apply the paint, and dependent on what you do, either how fast the paint reaches the canvas or how liquid the paint is, you can move it and pour it and change it across the canvas. So it's much more flexible. So what I would suggest, if somebody is called to start doing this and they've got their canvas and they've got their paint, what I would do before we do anything is I would guide people to either to listen to a really good piece of music. Now, it doesn't need to be anything calming or relaxing or meditative. Sometimes when I paint, I love listening to really hardcore dance music. I was a bit of a raver back in the day, but I know that gets me out of my head and into my body. So there's lots of different ways that you can do that. And that could be just having a boogie or doing some meditation or some mindfulness, or just taking a few moments to do some breath work, just to basically get rid of the day, what you're having for dinner, what the kids did, all the worries of the day. And then I always guide people to start with the paint, with the colour in front of them. So just lay out all the colours and just take a moment, and you can either do it visually, where you look and spend a few moments looking at each of the different colours and just seeing what feelings come up for you. Another way that you can do this, and if anybody's ever done tarot cards or had that kind of reading, they tell you to put your hand over the card and then you get a sensation to stop. I'm going to pick this one. You can do the same thing with paint.
So you know which one to pick.
Yes. And I mean, that's just a physical way to distract you. Your body already knows what colour it's going for, but sometimes that helps us get out of the process and just use your hand and just see what you're drawn to.
So sort of stop that logical thinking like, well, I like blue because my bedroom wall's painted blue. Yeah, just to be more...
Absolutely, because a lot of people will initially be drawn to colours that they like. And oftentimes the colours that we like are based on where we're at the moment, and they're associated with chakras for the obvious reasons. You've got all the kind of main chakras, you know, the red is a root chakra, orange, the sacral chakra, yellow, solar plexus, and so on. And what you tend to find is that if you have a preference for blue or purple, then you have a preference for the energy of that colour that helps you with imbalances in that area. And without giving too much away, and I'm always very, you know, I don't like to explain to people what each of the colours mean, because again, you go in with a preconceived idea of, oh, well, I've got some tummy issues, so I really need to go for that colour. It's genuinely about trusting where you're at on the day. So that would be the first thing. And even if all you do is pick 2 colours, that's a brilliant place to start. Then I always say to people, don't use paintbrushes. Don't use any of the traditional implements, because again, you have a preconceived idea of how you apply the paint. So you dip the paintbrush in and then you move it across the canvas in this particular way, or you dot it or whatever. So I would suggest to people that they get a plate and you just put a blob of the colours, whatever colours you've decided to go for, put the blobs onto the plate, get some water, and then if you've got things around the house like a straw, a toothbrush, a sponge like a dish sponge, tissue paper, cling film, tin foil, bubble wrap, anything you can get your hands on, cutlery, spatulas, you know, the whisk thing that you use to whisk up eggs, anything, it does not matter. Anything that you can use that's not a brush. But you've also got tools at the end of your hand, so you can use your fingers. And then literally dip whatever it is you're using. So if it is your fingers, just stick your fingers into some paint and just stuff them onto the canvas and just see what happens. And you'll probably find that you'll be like, oh God, that's terrible. What does that look like? And then you'll start to loosen up and try some different things and tap it, and then maybe add some water and shift the canvas and move the canvas, you know, tilting from left to right, back to forward, so that you can see the paint move around the canvas. And just keep doing this, and you will find that where you start is never where the painting ends. And you will probably find that you go through a wee phase where all the colours just blend into one, and then you end up with this brown sludgy mess. That's fine, because when you mix all the colours together, they all turn into brown.
That's what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the thing is, you just let that happen, and then you start to, that's almost like the trial run, just to get you out of your head and stop judging what you're doing.
That's your first pancake in the pan.
That is the first pancake in the pan.
The dodgy
yes. One. However, what we don't do is take the pancake out, chuck it out and start
chuck
again.
It in the bin.
You just put some more pancake mix over it and just see what happens. Then it turns into a muffin. Who cares? You know, so you just keep layering and layering and layering, and just allowing yourself to play, because it's playing. It is playing. Ultimately playing.
Thank you so much to Vicky for that fascinating chat. And actually, there was so much interesting information that Vicky shared with us that we weren't able to include it all in this episode because it would just been too long. But she guided us through a really interesting section talking about the different colours and what they mean and how to use them in your life or in your painting. So if you're interested in listening to that, head over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/writeupmypodcast. And for free, you can listen to that audio, that information from Vicky all about colour. And to find out more about Vicky's work, head to vickypaul.com and also check out her Instagram account where you can find her at Vicky J. Paul. And it's definitely worth checking out because some of her stuff is incredible, isn't it? It's beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. I follow her on Instagram and I just love how colourful and dynamic and
yes.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Okay, so did you do the challenge that she set us, Gwen?
I did.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. I really enjoyed it. I loved it actually. And can I just say, when we were on holiday recently in Greece and I went with a couple of friends who were artists and a couple of friends who are, as she would say, hobby artists, they do art around the house. So literally everybody had their paints with them and had their books with them, or they were all sketching. Wow. And I was just sat there reading my book and just thinking, I wish I was creative.
Yes.
I wish I could do this stuff. It just feels like they're spending their time really well.
Did you do art when you were younger? Did you do art? I'm sure that's
I did it. Tick.
Did you do
Done.
it? Done it. Done art. Did that
Done
when I
it.
was younger.
No, the art was not my strong point. I'm the person that when we had to draw figures in, geography or history or something, that literally all my friends would be going, let's have a look at Gwen.
Oh, okay.
Mine were the comedy drawings. Which I enjoyed, but yes, no, painting has never been my thing. So I was slightly trepidatious. Obviously, I didn't have a single paint in the house, but thankfully, one of my bezies, Erica Francis George, who we've mentioned every single episode, she's an amazing artist. Thankfully, she does have lots of paint. So I went round to her studio and she gave me them. And I literally was like, I don't even know how to use them. She gave me a paintbrush and some water. And then I remembered Vicky saying, don't use a paintbrush. Don't be held back. Just use anything else. So Erica had a sort of scrapey thing. In fact, I've sent you this photo. I've sent you a photo of what I was using, and I'll put this up on our Patreon. She had a scraper thing, so you just scoop some paint on that and just scrape, splat, or what am I trying to say? Wipe paint onto the page.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I just went out into the garden and just was picking flowers and grass.
Did you do any of the kind of head clearing, calming exercises before?
No, of course, no. Now, I've realised I've once again muffed up a little bit here, and I forgot you've just pointed out an integral part of the exercise, which was, so what was it again?
Well, she said try and clear your head beforehand so that you're not painting from a thinking perspective, you're painting from a feeling perspective. So whether that's blasting out loud music or doing some breathing exercises.
Okay, I forgot that bit. I was at Erica's place, so I'd been chatting to her husband, and then just went straight in. But I did just try and just have a moment to kind of tune into my guides and say, right, I need a decision. I was talking earlier about buying a house. I need a decision on whether this house is for me. And then I was just like, well, let's just go. Let's just go and see what comes out. And do you want to describe what you can see on that on that piece of paper, Kate?
So when I first opened the message with this picture on it, I was really surprised how beautiful it is. It's really, so it's a garden scene, but quite abstract. I can't really see in the photo, and you can tell us a bit more about it in a minute, because you said you went picking flowers in the garden. But you've got a sort of wildflower grass, meadowy scene with some larger kind of tulip-type heads bursting out of it, this sort of washy blue sky, and then a beautiful bright sunshine. And it feels really calming, and it feels really peaceful, and it feels like it's been painted by someone who's really at one with themselves. It's gorgeous.
Oh, that is so
I was impressed.
Lovely.
That's why I asked you earlier if you did art at school, because I saw it and I was like, oh, wow, so Gwen's actually really artistic. So surprised.
That is absolutely brilliant. I love that you think that. Well, do you know, I'm quite surprised myself that it ended up being a garden. And there is something about the house I went to see had like zero garden, and it was all totally overgrown. And it really, it's just up the road from the one I'm in, which has got such a beautiful garden and so many beautiful flowers. And it really has made me appreciate the house I'm in so much more. Right. And my guides were like, I don't know what my guides were up to. They were like, enjoy the garden. I don't know why. It just all became about nature. And actually what you can see there, so I used that paint scrapey thing to make like just big streaks, which then kind of look like big tulips, or as Erica's husband said, they look like big ice creams. Shut up, Justin.
Shut up, Justin.
But all the rest, like all those, like the grasses and the flowers, I literally did those all by getting actual flowers and actual grasses and just dipping them in paint and splatting them on the page.
What a brilliant idea.
Yes, and I had so much fun just splatting bits of grass and splatting flowers onto the page. It was just so much fun, and then building layers of it. And my son is a flower or a couple of different flowers, which I painted and then squished it onto the page, and then did another one on top, then did another one on top. And
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And how did you feel while you were doing it? Were you sat there thinking, "Oh God, this doesn't look like I want it to look," or were you able to just sort of, did it feel like a bit of a mindful thing, and that you stopped thinking about all the other stuff in life? Sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth. Let's go back a step.
Well, no, I like those words that you're putting into my mouth. I felt really mindful. Do you know, it's funny, I kept doing a little bit like, but things came out really well. I was doing little noises, and Erica was like, oh, they're happy little noises. I was just really enjoying it. But I did really realise, like I tried to do some birds by splatting some grass dipped in black on the and I was like, oh, they don't look very good. So I was covering them up. So I was also aware that I was wanting it to look good, or if things didn't, and I... the more I did, the worse it looked in a way. And I was like, oh, it looked better before I splatted that on top of that. But so there was a part of me, partly I was just really letting rip and enjoying it, and just really enjoying going into the garden and just splatting the page and getting it all over me. And it was that was really great. But I was also aware of wanting it to look good, which is kind of not what she was talking about, is it?
No, but it's hard. It's hard to turn that off.
Yes,
and I wonder if it's one of those things, the more you do it and the more you kind of practice it, she talked about, like any muscle, you've got to keep using it to make it stronger and more effective, that maybe the easier it becomes to sort of switch off your brain and just go with it a bit more. And maybe, you need to kind of be doing it semi-regularly and fairly often to get to that place.
Yes.
But also, I guess, like anything therapeutic, like the first session with a counsellor, or the first session doing yoga or whatever or meditation, you never come out of that being like, that was amazing, that was brilliant, I'm fixed. You do need to do it regularly, don't you? And I guess this is that.
So how about you, Kate? Were you a bit more wild and free?
Well, I had one first failed attempt in that I went to our shed, which we've got a little studio space in there. My partner's quite enjoys doing a bit of spray painting, so I thought, let's go in there with the spray paints, that'd be really fun. But actually it didn't work, because the spray paints, you've got such a specific way of using them, you can't be wild and free with them, really, and particularly on a small piece of paper. It doesn't work. So I came kind of trotting out there with my tail between my legs thinking, no, that didn't work. So I was all geared up for it. And before that, actually, I put some loud music on, because I find a really good way for me to clear my head is, like she was saying, put some loud music on. And if it's loud enough, it stops my inner monologue and I can kind of get into a bit of a zone and stop thinking so much. So I was like, right, okay, that was attempt number 1. Failed. Attempt number 2. I was like, this time I'm going to try her breathing thing. So I put my hand on my chest and tried some of those deep breathing exercises. And that was quite nice, felt quite calm. And I got a load of paints, because we've got a load of poster paint stuff in the cupboard and some paper out. And I decided I was going to use my fingers, because I liked the idea of the kind of the tactileness of that.
Nice.
And my hands. And I did what she suggested about closing your eyes, well, sort of seeing what colours I were drawn to, then closing my eyes and moving my hand over the top of them. I don't know whether I didn't really have any really real sense of where to stop on that one, but I just tried not to overthink about and just went for the colours that just immediately leapt out at me. So I chose pink, purple, yellow and blue.
Nice.
And I just squirted them all on the paint, and then it felt so good just getting my fingers and my hands in it. And actually it reminded me a bit of the episode we did about play and about just that kind of real joyfulness of just playing and getting mucky and not really caring. And I decided I wasn't going to care too much about what it looked like, but I found it really hard not to.
Okay. So what did you say? You just squidged the... Can I open yours now?
So open mine. So mine's abstract.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm a bit terrified because if that's a reflection of what's going on in my head, then there's a gothic nightmare playing itself out in my mind as we speak.
This might be the one where the school teacher takes the parent aside and says that their problems at home.
It looks like the act of a disturbed mind.
So talk me through this. Did you say that you just squidged the paint straight onto the page?
No, so I squidged all the paints into sort of separate blobs on the plate. And then using my fingers, I just went to what I was drawn through. But sometimes I had half a finger in one colour, half in the other colour. And then I found this real urge, and I don't know if it was... I like to think it was some creative juices flowing through me, but I think actually it was just mild mania, just like a manic outburst.
It was your guides, Kate.
I just found myself really quickly, making marks on the page, and it just... Well, yeah, I don't know how to describe it.
All right, I'm going to attempt this. It's a it's a joyful I love that you can see your finger marks, your streaks in there. There's a lot of pink on the left. I'm enjoying that a lot. We've got as you said, yellows and blues and purples, and it does look like a grown-ass adult has got their fingers in a load of paint and just squidged it all across the page. That is exactly what it looks like.
That's exactly what happened. Just had an emotional breakdown on the page.
No, but did it feel like you were in the zone?
I felt like I was teetering on the edge of the zone.
Right.
I found it quite difficult to switch off my brain. I couldn't let there be any white spaces. Must have paint covering everything, must not be any white space. And I kept looking at thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to share this picture on Instagram. Oh my God, what's going on here?
What does this mean?
But then I kept telling myself, don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be anything. Just go with it.
Exactly. And did it take you long? You said you did it quickly.
Yeah, it didn't take me long at all. Does it look like it took me a long time?
No. Were you done within 10 minutes?
I'd push it out to a hard 20.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So you would have been mindful in that time.
Yeah, no, I was.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I found it really satisfying. I found the sensation of the paint on my hands really satisfying, and using different bits of my hands, not just my fingers. And I found just the freedom of knowing no one really has to see it. I found the freedom of putting it down there.
Yeah.
Really satisfying. And I did find myself thinking about it afterwards. I did find myself thinking, when it's dried, I'd like to go and maybe do another layer or some shapes or something on the top of it.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
And I did feel when I was doing it that the more I do this, the easier it will be for it to be a really free-flowing experience.
Yes. So, that brings me nicely on to my next question then. So would you do this again, Kate?
Well, I think I might do, because I've got young kids, so the paints are out semi-regularly in our house. So it's not too big of a break out of my kind of day if I was to roll my sleeves up and give it a go. And yeah, I can definitely see how it can be a tool for people to it felt like a big exhalation. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's nice.
And I can see how it can be a useful tool for people just to get inside things into the outside without having to verbalise them.
Nice. I'm looking, when you say that, I'm just glancing back at your picture. What is she getting? What is she telling us?
The world is ending! So I haven't asked you, would you do it again? Do you think this is something that you, in a moment of feeling like you needed an outlet, you find yourself trotting over to Erica's house and...
Well, yes, it did really make me think I would love to have some paints in the house, and I would love. I was thinking like if we, when the nieces are over, nice to all paint together. Yeah. But I do think I would. I mean, yes, I did ask for some guidance, and I'm not sure of the guidance I was given, but I think that's maybe a skill I can develop.
Yes.
And as I get to understand colours more, so but it did make me think that. It was such a lovely exercise, and just to be really present and mindful and focused on something like for a good hour or so, and to just be playing. Yeah, it was lovely. Would love to do it again.
That's exactly it, isn't it? Just that being just focused on something. And that comes through on so many of the different things we talk about, don't we? Just really focusing on one thing can be really soothing and calming, and it just sort of stops the cogs turning, and can be really can make you feel good.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe on the next holiday I'll be there with my book, painting away with the others with my abstract art. They'll be like, "What's that, Gwen?" I'll be like, "I don't know."
This is my inner soul. I think you'll find your superficial landscape
does not compare to this.
It's not a patch.
Pipe down, guys. I'm channeling, Thank you for listening to Write Up My Podcast, the last episode of Season 4.
And please do get in touch with us. We love to hear your thoughts, musings and potential episode ideas. You can email us at writeupmypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Twitter at writeupmy.
Don't forget, if you are listening on Apple, then please do rate and review us. 5 stars, please. And we will read your reviews out on air because we love to hear them. Also, please tell your friends and like and subscribe wherever you listen.
And head over to Patreon, where for the cost of a mere cup of coffee a month, you can join the Rump Club, where during our break between the end of this season and the start of next one, Gwen and I are going to be posting all sorts of extra wiffle waffles, photos. I mean, we don't know yet, but we'll think of some lovely things that I know you're going to enjoy. So go to Patreon.
I'm just like, please don't overpromise what we're going to be doing. We're definitely going to be recording every week, though, so we will be back every week for the Rump Club. Yeah.
Go to patreon.com/writeupmypodcast, and you can find us there. And a great big extra special thank you to our team who really help us look and sound so good.
That is Andy G on the music. He is fantastic. And that is Erica Francis George on the artwork. Please do check her out on her socials at Erica Francis George.
So keep in touch with us on Instagram, Twitter and Patreon, and we will be back in a couple of months with Season 5 of Write Up My Podcast.
OMG!
OMG! Frickin' G. Meanwhile, keep trying things
to make you feel good. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tell me, did you like the podcast, Brian?
No!
Oh. If, unlike Brian, you thought our podcast was really great, then don't hold back. Like, subscribe, and tell your mate. But if, like Brian, you thought our podcast wasn't fun, then just keep quiet. Don't feel the need to tell anyone. We'd love to hear from you if you've got some thoughts to share. Such rich and lovely views that all should be aware of. But I hope you liked our podcast and you thought it was really great. And if you did, like, subscribe, and tell your mate. 'Cause we don't need grumpy pants bringing everybody down. No, we don't need negative Nellies making people frown. No. So I hope you liked our podcast and you thought it was really great. And if you did, like, subscribe, and tell your mate.